Thank you, Chairwoman, for convening this hearing. As a former city councilor, I chaired the Transportation and Public Safety Committee and was a member of the Land Use Committee in my hometown. I became closely familiar with the implementation challenges associated with walkability and microtransit and safe streets. Throughout this work, both at the local level and at the federal level, I've incorporated an approach from the bottoms-up movement called Strong Towns, originated in Minnesota by a recovering roadway engineer and has now really gone nationwide and inspired citizens and developers and transportation planners to think differently about how we design and develop our city streets. It seeks to replace America's post-war pattern of development, a very brittle one focused on automobile traffic and single-family zoning, with a much more vital and socioeconomically rich pattern of multifamily development and streets oriented around people. And this is especially salient and urgent now because as fatalities of people walking and biking on our roads continues to rise, it's just very clear that our pattern of roadway design and the status quo isn't working. Following the passage of the bipartisan infrastructure package, I've been proud to support a new agency authorized in that bill, the Advanced Research Projects Agency Infrastructure, ARPA-I, which can be an incubator for innovation to support the Strong Towns approach to roadway design. And I'm hopeful that the witnesses today, as you have already, can help us brainstorm for how to incorporate Strong Towns in our planning and development. On that vein, my first question is for Councilor Clegg. Thank you for your helpful commentary so far. The Strong Towns approach operates with the understanding that it's not enough to merely accommodate pedestrians on roads that are dominated by automobiles, but rather to flip that dynamic and to accommodate automobiles on roads that are dominated by pedestrians. Our streetways need to be places that are at human scale and that feel and are indeed safe for humans. Can you talk to us about how you are trying to reprioritize how we think about street design in the Strong Towns approach, how we are trying to, or you might be trying to, instead of attribute fatalities to driver error, which research has shown is not the biggest cause of fatalities, rather to recognize that roadway design is really the culprit here, and we must think differently about how we design roads from first principles.
Thank you, Representative. I would absolutely love to answer that question. In fact, we've had Chuck Marohn come to Boise and talk to us about the Strong Towns approach. And
I've had him come to my district too. That's fantastic.
Yes, and so I would go to a story about a small town in Idaho. Most of my day work is in very small rural communities, a place where the public works director is also the baseball coach and the EMT. And we were looking at the roadways there and trying to figure out how to make them safer and more inviting for pedestrians. We decided on some roadway markings. He was excited to try it. And when we showed up 3 weeks later to do it, he had his baseball striping machine to stripe the road because it's such a small town. He had no other way to do it, but it worked. So I think the lesson is that we need to allow people to innovate. We need to allow people to respond to local conditions. It's interesting to me that roadways that were built long before we had traffic engineers and an AASHTO Greenbelt book are the ones that are the safest everywhere in the country. And it's because the roadways are narrower for cars and wider for pedestrians. There's a tree lawn, there's a separated sidewalk where there are bike facilities, they're very safe. And so as we look to flip this, I think we have plenty of space that we've set aside for right-of-way. We've just used it, I believe, in the wrong way. We need to think again about how to reuse that space and prioritize shared streets for all people. We all can envision that picture that we've seen of the historic downtown street with a street horse and a car and a person on foot and maybe one of those three-wheeled bicycles. And they all were able to share that space because the street was designed in a way that sharing it was safe.
Counselor, I have to interject, but I appreciate your answer. Couldn't have said it better myself. And I would just add on to that part of that repurposing of shared space is going to need to be parking. We have subsidized parking in this country, especially in our densely settled areas, to an egregious degree, and we're going to have to repurpose and think differently about storage for vehicles and think instead about creating shared spaces for humans. Chairwoman, I'd like to submit for the record the Strong Towns strategy, which they just came out with recently.
So ordered.
Thank you.
Gentleman's time has expired. I now recognize